Four-man rush again. Fields to the end zone. Moore. Touchdown.
With time, throws it short. Foreman with the catch. Foreman to the end zone for the touchdown. Warriors' long pass of the day is 15 yards, and it's intercepted. Picked off by Jalen Johnson. Johnson untouched for the touchdown.
What's up, Bears fans? We have a Hall of Famer that is the number 23. No, I'm not talking about Michael Jordan. I'm talking about Devin Hester, the greatest return man of all time. Also, two other Bears. Finally, Steve McMichael is in the Hall of Fame. Mongo, some of 85 fans' favorite player. I personally love Mongo. He's one of my favorite players from that team. And, of course, also Julius Peppers, who also played for the Chicago Bears back when the last time the defense was dominant. So, Jeff, exciting day. A lot of good stuff happening on Radio Row. Awesome that we've got some Hall of Famers from our very own Chicago Bears, two of which played together. So, yeah, what do you think, Jeff?
Well, I think it's good to finally see Devin Hester got in. It's without jumping into it. I mean, I guess we'll just jump right into this thing, with the Hall of Fame, because it was pretty exciting to see that he did finally get in, Devin Hester. Last year, I think everybody was kind of hoping he'd get in on the first ballot, and for whatever reason, it just didn't manifest that way. So it's good to see that everyone realized that the greatest returner in the history of the game, did change games and was a huge part of how dominant the Bears defense and special teams were in that era. And it's nice to see him get that recognition and I believe he's the first returner that's ever been inducted as a returner. So it's good to see that, and again, like I said, it would have been nice to see him get in on the first ballot, but it's good to see him get in now.
Yeah, I mean, I personally, I wouldn't have minded either way if he was first ballot or not. I understand the argument where people think he shouldn't have been first ballot because he didn't have a position that he excelled in outside of returning kicks. But, he's the greatest to ever do it at that position. So it's, it'd be keeping out a player who is the greatest at their position of all time would have been a serious travesty. I think eventually he would have gotten in, even if he would have made it all the way to senior voting. But yeah, regardless, he deserves the spot. He's in. Speaking of senior finalists, I'm so glad that Mongo, Steve McMichael, is in the Hall of Fame. It shouldn't have taken until, he was where he is now. If you don't know, Steve McMichael has ALS, and he's currently fighting for his life, has been for the last probably close to a year or so. I believe that he's really been in really bad shape. But one of my all-time favorite Bears, I love Steve McMichael. He wrote a book about the Chicago Bears. It's a great book. If you have not read that, look it up. He's a Hollywood actor. If you've ever seen Blazing Saddles, he plays Mongo. And man, that's very contradicting movie for today's day and age. But it's a great movie, in my opinion. And I love Mongo. I love Steve McMichael. Very happy to see him get in. And, Julius Peppers, although he's remembered mostly for his days in Carolina, he had some great seasons in Chicago as well before he went over to those cheeseheads and finished his career there. But love Julius Peppers. So glad that he's also in the Hall of Fame. Very deserving. One of the best players of that generation. But yeah, I love the one that I'm the most happy for is Steve McMichael. I'm glad he's able to get in while he's still living, so that he can actually see that he's in the Hall of Fame. And that I know that meant a lot to him. So I'm super glad that happened.
Yeah, I'll kind of give you some more of my thoughts on that in a second. I just want to give you guys a reminder to please give us a like here, give the video a like, give us all a follow at Barroom Network. We're on X or Twitter, and also here on YouTube at Barroom Network. You can follow me at JAW, like Jaws0235. I know those numbers are a little arbitrary. I'll probably end up changing my Twitter handle, to be honest, guys, but that's at JAW0235. Tim is at Tim Willis24. So again, guys, please give us a like and a follow. But to kind of piggyback off of your points there, Tim, about Mongo, the guy, he was such a presence on that line. Just Tim and I, we're going to be honest with you guys here. Tim and I weren't alive in '85 when the Bears won the Super Bowl. We weren't really even, by the time that defense was at its end, Tim and I were like babies. So we never really got to see them do their thing, but obviously everyone is familiar with the Bears and their legendary defense. We've all seen movies and clippings and things like that, so we're all familiar with how dominant they were. And, just from what everyone has said about Mongo and how instrumental he was to that defense and to his teammates, it says everything in the world. And Tim's right. People have been talking about this and how important it was to Steve himself to get this, to get into the Hall of Fame, to get this opportunity, because he did want this from what everyone has said and reported about. So it's good to see that he got in also. Really happy to see that because he is deserving. And I agree with Cliff makes a comment. I'm hoping you guys get to see as great a year as '85 was for the Bears fans. And you know what? I thought we were going to when Devin Hester returned that opening kickoff at a Super Bowl in 2007. I thought it was really going to happen. We were going to get it done. I'm telling you, I remember watching that game. I was at my best friend's house. We were upstairs. His at the time, their house is kind of like a condo. And so there's like a downstairs, and the upstairs is like almost like its own house. And his brother had always kind of lived up in that area for the longest time. Rest in peace, his brother. But in any case, we were up there watching a football game, watching a Super Bowl. And I'll never forget them returning that kickoff. Devin Hester returning that kickoff for a touchdown, thinking to myself, they're going to win. They're going to get this thing done. Somehow or another, it didn't work out that way. And, plenty of members of the defense had talked about Mike Brown's presence, and if he was there, how it would have changed that game. But nonetheless, I digress on all that. But, I totally agree. I would love the opportunity to see a Bears team with a chance to win like that. I felt pretty good at that year. Offensively, they were kind of up and down, but everyone loves Matt Forte and knows how good of a player he was. And they kind of, rode on his back a lot. So I think they could have won that game, and there's a possibility they would have had they had Mike Brown. But again, like I said, I digress. There's a couple comments in here about some stuff that's been said today that we're going to get into. But I do want to make a couple of comments here about the last guy that got inducted with Bears ties, and that's Julius Peppers. And a lot of people talk about, his career was made in Carolina. This guy did everything he did. He's a Hall of Famer because of what he did in Carolina. But as Bears fans, we all know that those of us that got a chance to watch him play in Chicago, he was pretty damn good in Chicago too. He was a dominant player on that defensive line, and his teammates would tell you just how good he was. And there was a time, I remember when that free agent class came in and how exciting it was, and how everybody thought, here we go, we're going to have an opportunity at this again. And again, it just kind of never came to fruition that year either. I think it was 2009 or 2010. I can't remember for sure exactly what year that was, but
9, I think.
Yeah. So anyways, it was, who was the other? Brandon Manamaliuna? Was he one of the other ones, one of the other signings? And who was the other guy? I'm like, is Chester Taylor? Was that the other one? Or I can't remember for sure.
No, you're from Dallas, running Dallas.
Why can't I think of it right now?
Anyways, Marion Barber.
Marion Barber. Was that it? Was that the class? You guys correct us if we're wrong here, but I think Tim's right. I think it was those three that came in that year, and everybody was all excited about it. But in any case,
they traded for Julius Peppers. If I remember right, he gave up first round.
They signed him and they traded for someone else. Yeah, whatever. It doesn't matter. In any case, the point is that Julius Peppers was damn good in Chicago too, not just in Carolina. And when people talk about his career, they should mention the fact that he was in Chicago, and they should have Chicago on his plaque as well as Carolina, because he did have an impact here with the Bears. And they made some noise when he was here too. They made the playoffs, and I believe they got the NFC Championship with him too. So, yeah. So, yeah, that's right. So anyways, I just kind of wanted to give him his dues too, because I loved watching Peppers in Chicago. He was a lot of fun here. And it was, that team they had opportunities as well. And then, we don't want to get into everything with the offensive side there, but there was some stuff there and Julius Peppers was a big part of that. So I just kind of wanted to give those guys their props and mention how happy we are that those three guys got into Hall of Fame. And how nice is it that three Bears got in all at the same year? That's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I don't know. When's the last time that's happened besides maybe the 85 team?
I don't know. I can't remember last time three in the same year. Yeah. I mean, that's
right.
Yeah. I don't know. So anyways,
I want to mention on here, Aldo makes a point that Aldo corrected me. The actual star from Blazing Saddles that played Mongo was Detroit Lions lineman Alex Karras, and
good job,
Steve McMichael was nicknamed after that character Mongo. So that's my mistake. And that would make sense why he has that name. But yeah. But yes, regardless, good movie. Steve McMichael was definitely a Mongo guy. He was a big man. Very, very nasty. So let's walk into the Merrill Hodge thing, Jeff. Let's do that. So on Radio Row today, or maybe, I think it was today, Merrill Hodge was asked about the Caleb Williams situation. And he gave a very, very answer and an honest answer. And for most people don't agree with his sentiment, but for a lot of us who have watched Justin Fields for as long as we have, we can understand where he's coming from. But if you've also watched Caleb Williams tape, you may also agree with him as well. There's a lot of people that look at him and think that generational player that, nobody's thinking about, he may not pan out. You don't know. And there's a lot of things that Merrill points out here about his. So Aldo actually has a clip of this, the Merrill Hodge quote. We're going to put it up on the screen here and let you guys listen to it. And let's see what your assumptions are from it.
Oh, I've only watched Caleb Williams 3 games last year, 3 this year. So I'm only halfway done. Okay. The one thing that is clear, he is not special. He is not something unique like a Patrick Mahomes, and I hope the Bears don't think, well, let's try to make up for our mistake when we pass up Patrick Mahomes and go get the Patrick Mahomes. The kid is not Patrick Mahomes, ain't even remotely close to that. So it is unfair to Justin Fields. He has had new coordinator. There's no possible way you can know about your guy when you do that. It's the worst thing that can happen to any player, especially a quarterback. Now, when Justin came out, the one thing that I thought he had just an inexperience. He just needed more experience. He lacked that. But what I have seen in Justin Fields, from my evaluation, there's enough growth and hope there that I would not let him go because I see enough there.
So, in a nutshell here, he's basically saying Caleb Williams is not special, which is pretty polar opposite from what everyone else has been saying, which is, you can argue whether or not he is quote unquote generational. That term has been thrown around like crazy. Myself and many other people have said that. Now, whether or not you agree with the fact that he is that generational, I think most people would say he's pretty special of a player. He's pretty special talent. I mean, he does some things on the football field. He makes some throws that most people just cannot make. Most humans just cannot do. So for someone to come out and say that a guy like that is not special from the tape that he's putting on the field, you can say whatever you want about his antics, crying in the stands and not going to press conferences, or what you may think he is as a leader or as a teammate, which no one really knows because nothing has really come out about that yet, that's been really out in the open. But say what you want about that. This is the first time anybody's really come out and said by the tape, like, this dude is not all that. Okay. So to me, that's saying something, because Merrill Hodge is not an idiot. Okay. So when somebody comes out and says that, it kind of speaks a little bit to me. Now, that being said, I'm not going to say that, he's never going to make it. He's never going to be anything. And, that says everything you need to know, because we don't know. Cliff, I love what's on the screen right now, though, because I agree with Cliff. In polls we trust, he's the guy with way more info than we have. And that's a perfect point right there. And this is exactly kind of where I was going to segue with that. So I don't want to talk a whole bunch about the quarterback thing today, guys. I did want you guys to see what Merrill Hodge said, because it's important to see that what another NFL guy sees and thinks about this. But Cliff is exactly right. Anybody who thinks that this decision is made yet is wrong. That nothing has been made yet. No decision has been made yet. Anybody who's been watching Poles work and listening to any of his press conferences knows how important the person is to him, the football character and all that kind of stuff, and how that's such a big piece of this puzzle on top of the ability to evaluate talent. He's mentioned in his press conferences before and on record saying, I fully trust me and my scouts' abilities to scout talent and to see whether guys can play or not. But we got to figure out who the person is. So when I say that, you guys, we don't even get to see these like interviews with these players until like the combine. And then they start having like the top 30 visits and all that stuff. So in my opinion, when we start seeing reports in those times, if there's talk about leaning one way or another, then we might have a little bit better idea what's going to happen at that time. But my point about this all is I trust in Ryan Poles, just like Cliff says, because he does have all this info. Okay. And if he makes a decision, either scenario, guys, let's say he makes a decision, he's going to go with Caleb Williams to draft him number 1. Well, that's because he's got all this info. He believes in him as a person. He believes in him as a teammate. He thinks that his teammates will rally around him and he can lead the team to the Super Bowl. That's all there is to it. He's going to say that the talent and the person is what we want. Okay. If he decides against that, whether it's Justin or somebody else, it's going to probably be going to be because of the person, not because of the talent or the football player, in my opinion. And that's an arguable point, but in my opinion, it's going to be because of the person. Okay. So, and if he sticks with Fields, it's all going to be because of that. It's going to be because of the talent and because of the person and how galvanized the team is around him and how much they support him. DJ Moore on Radio Row with CHGO was talking about how he wants Justin. He talked on another show about how he's been advocating for Justin. So again, I don't want to get too far into this thing, guys, because we've talked about it at length and we got, still 2 or 3 months until the draft happens. So there's a lot to go into this and a lot more to talk about. But the point is, when somebody says something like this and then it's different than what everybody else has been saying, it is something to listen to. But again, we got to consider the fact that they're going to look into the person. They're going to look into all the details about the person. And if it's Caleb, if it's another quarterback, it's going to be because of the combination of talent on the field and person. And guys, I cannot underestimate how important that is.
Yeah, agreed 100%. And one thing that a lot of people aren't thinking of or aren't talking about is they haven't even met with any of these players. They haven't had any top 30 visits. We haven't had the combine yet. That's where a lot of this stuff takes place. The combine, honestly, in my opinion, the workout is only 50% of the evaluation. The other 50% of the evaluation are the meetings and finding out about the person and, talking to their teammates, their coaches, their family, their friends, people around them, and finding out the character of these players. And, you may hear all these great things about somebody, but you have those face-to-face meetings and, okay, this guy's not exactly what everybody's saying he is, or this guy's even better than everybody's saying he is. It all depends on the face-to-face meetings and how Ryan Poles and staff feel about the player as a person and as a football player. And that football character is every bit as important. And he's made that very perfectly clear. And I also, thought it was interesting too. I shouldn't say interesting. It's we've all known this, but Jeff mentioned that DJ Moore was on CHGO and mentioned that. They also had TJ Edwards on today with Khalil Herbert, and both of them just talked about Justin and how he galvanizes the offense together, how he's such a great leader, how he takes control, all this teammates respond to him. Those are things that you can't take lightly. It's hard to come in and control a room like that. And, even, some quarterbacks, they have captain status and they may be good leaders, but I feel like Justin has another level of that, the way that his teammates respect him. And on CHGO again today, they were mentioning, they heard DJ Moore talking to somebody else, and he was giving even more rave, basically saying like, they better keep Justin and they better not trade him away. Like, this is the guy I want. They better not do this. And, that's a little bit more than when he's openly speaking out in public, but when, it's heard from what he's talking to other people, I agree. And Cliff makes a point here, correcting himself by saying he'll work with whoever is there. But at the same time, they're all going to fit. It's a business.
Real quick, let me just say, Tim, to go with both of you guys, you and Cliff, what he says, I agree. But here's the thing, guys. If that's the initial thought that comes to mind with DJ Moore, and that's initially what comes out of his mouth, that's what he's thinking and feeling, okay? And there's a reason for that. Whether he knows something or whether that's genuinely what he wants, it matters regardless. So, that's something to consider there. And go ahead, Tim. I'm sorry to cut you off. Actually,
and that's right. I mean,
go ahead.
That's right. It's, if that's the first thing coming out of his mouth, that probably means that's initially his first reaction. So, but again, he continues to praise Justin and how he wants to play with Justin. DJ Moore had the best year of his career last year with Justin Fields. So I don't think he's ready for somebody else to just come in the door and switch off with him or switch to another a quarterback. But, again, don't want to really get too deep into the quarterback controversy here, but it's just very when you hear all of these players and a lot of former players that are coming on and they're in on Justin Fields and feel like the Bears should stay with Justin. But, it's pretty good. And I like how they are in support of him. And it does say like how his character is and how he's viewed in that locker room. And it's going to be a very, very difficult decision for Ryan Poles regardless. But I think it's even more of a difficult decision if he moves on from Justin because of what he means to that team and that locker room. But speaking of players and speaking of visits on CHGO, for everybody that doesn't know, CHGO, as well as about every other media network known to man, is at Radio Row right now in Vegas preparing for the Super Bowl. And CHGO has been very, very busy this week. They have gotten really good interviews and talked to a lot of really good guests this week. I guess Greg Braggs has just been going around basically grabbing people and finding them to talk to them.
I was going to say, let me interrupt you real quick, Tim. Let me interrupt you real quick. I was going to say, guys, if you're not following them yet, you should check CHGO because they've had some really good coverage the last few days at Radio Row at the Super Bowl, and they've had some good interviews with some good people and gotten some good intel about different things. Some people were supporting more of the Caleb route, some people were supporting the Justin route, and either way, it's good opinions and good intel. They've gotten some really good stuff, and there's been some kind of funny stuff too. Like Tim was talking about, Greg Braggs apparently is just going and trying to grab everybody and he's pushing people aside to make his way to where he's trying to go. He's taking his shirt off in interviews with Bert Kreischer on there. So yeah, you guys should definitely check it out because it's been good stuff from them lately. So without going too far into it, definitely check it out, but go ahead, Tim, with what you were saying.
Yeah. I think I have to reach out to Braggs and ask him to come back on the show and share some of his coverage and what it was like experiencing Radio Row. Yeah, he's a character. I really like Greg because he's a fan, just like we are. He calls himself a meatball.
That's all there is to it. He's
authentic. He's authentic, like grandma's meatballs, authentic. I really like I like Greg, and I like that he's a fan. He gives a fan perspective. But I wanted to mention CHGO because Cole Kmet came on today, and if you guys did not realize, Cole was getting pretty beat up towards the end of the year there, and he walked on set with CHGO in a sling. He actually has a broken bone in his forearm, and he played the last game with a fracture in his forearm. So, I mean, if you didn't know that Cole Kmet was tough before, wow. I mean, that's especially as a tight end, especially as much as he's blocking in that wide tight end role, that's a lot asking for a tight end to do. And for him to have a broken arm is unbelievably impressive and just shows the kind of grit and toughness and character that he has playing for his hometown Chicago Bears and how much he loves playing for the Bears. And for all contract conversations, like, I am so glad that Cole Kmet got the extension that he did, because he is the epitome of what we want to see in a Bears player and wearing that uniform. And, Jeff and I we've mentioned this many, many, many times on the show. We're huge Notre Dame fans. Cole Kmet, of course, a Notre Dame graduate. I remember when he was drafted, I called Jeff Mealy. I was so excited to see that that's the direction they went, because I wanted to see. I really thought it was a very realistic possibility. Yeah, and they only had they didn't have a first round pick, and they had the second rounder, and I was like, do they really go with a tight end here? But like, Cole Kmet would be the perfect guy for what we're trying to do here. And yeah, it was an awesome moment. But again, just to go back on what I was saying, just an awesome guy, awesome character, awesome player. He's only growing. He had a breakout season this year. Like, I feel like no matter what they do, if they do need to get him some help, they need to get him an actual U tight end to come in and be that move type of role, and make it where he's the only guy out there that's having to do everything, because it's a tough position already, and it's very taxing on the body playing that wide tight end role with all the blocking and then going on these assignments. And I love Cole Kmet. But Jeff, what did you think about that when you saw that he came out there in a sling and that he did indeed have a fracture?
Well, first thing, before I give you my thoughts on that, which is pretty crazy to think about a tight end blocking and running down the field, catching passes with a broken forearm, or doing anything in a game with a broken forearm. But before I go on to that part, talking about the contract and getting him locked up and all that, I do agree with you, Tim. But here, what I was going to say was, frankly, I was a little surprised when they extended Kmet and what they extended him to, the contract that he got. Number one, considering the fact that he wasn't drafted by this regime, that was the big thing. And number two, he made a pretty substantial amount of money, considering the fact he didn't really produce to that level of pay, at least in my opinion, at least, and most would probably agree with that. He didn't have that kind of production until this year, until that would warrant that kind of pay. So, I was a little surprised by it. I was even a little surprised when the Bears drafted him in the second round, because he was good at Notre Dame, guys. Don't get me wrong, but I didn't see Cole Kmet as like this surefire, like going to be a really good NFL player when he was at Notre Dame. He wasn't that kind of receiver. He was a good blocker. Everybody knew that. And that's really what vaulted him in the second round. But he, as far as like a pass catcher, he was not a dynamic pass catcher at Notre Dame, guys, not by any stretch. And, he has really, really grown as a receiver with the Bears. And this year, he was fantastic as a receiver. You could trust him to catch anything. I don't think he had a single drop all season. And on top of that, he's you can rely on him to catch the ball in the red zone and be a target in there. And the guy was just a force this year. So to get onto the point about the broken forearm, kind of just shows his toughness. The guy has not missed an NFL game in his career. He wants to play. And from what he said in the interview, the fracture actually happened on a catch he made down the middle of the field. And what's kind of funny about that is, I could be wrong about this, but if I remember correctly, he was banged up already going into that game, pretty banged up significantly. And you could tell when he was like getting up, off certain catches during the game, he looked like he wasn't feeling real great, like he was banged up, and then I think the catch he's talking about, I think I know what catch he's talking about. It was over the middle of the field. It was a big catch down the middle, deep down the middle, and he caught it, and a defender just drilled him as soon as he caught the ball, and he got, right to the ground. And he kind of laid there for a second before he got up, and everybody knows Cole Kmet knows how tough he is. The dude is tough as nails. So when you see him sitting on the ground for a second, get up and have a hard time, I think he was on his knee for a second, having difficulty getting back up on his feet, kind of shaking it off, he took something tough there, took something hard. So breaking his forearm on the field, and he came back in the game and kept playing, that says something, dude. And he's just still, he still has that drive in him to just want to be that kind of player. So, I love it. I love that he's there doing this, and I love the fact that we have him. He's exactly what you want in Chicago, and I really I do love the way he's grown also. So kudos to Poles for identifying that ahead of time, getting him locked down to probably what most people thought was a little more than he was worthy of, but then bam, now he's great. So it worked out. So it's a good move. It kind of reminds me of the stuff that the White Sox had done in the last several years, where they were signing some of these young players who were prospects, hoping to lock them down before they got too expensive and make them, long-term pieces. And really none of them have panned out. It turned out to be a disaster. I don't want to get into all that with you guys, but this one did not turn out that way. So I'm happy to see that Cole Kmet, worked out and everything was good. I see you guys talking about the Brock Bowers photo that happened at the Senior Bowl. For those that don't know, he took a picture with Rob Gronkowski, and he kind of looked like a little goofy. He looked like a 30, 40-year-old man, and he really didn't look like an NFL tight end, at least in my opinion. And I'm not really the biggest Brock Bowers fan in the first place, if I'm being honest with you guys. I don't think you can say whether or not he's a fit with the Bears offense, because, sure, you could pair him with Kmet, and they could probably make that work like the Patriots did. It's hard to do that. They could probably make it work. But the biggest issue with that, in my opinion, guys, is the financial thing behind that. You got to pay 2 tight ends big money at some point. Do they really want to do that? So I just don't see that. But again, that's kind of not here or there. But yeah, it was just kind of funny you guys making that point about Brock Bowers. He did kind of look a little goofy there that was the case. But or next to Gronkowski, I should say. But and Aldo says he looks like a tourist at Disney World. He kind of did. In all honesty, he really kind of did. It was pretty funny looking. I wish we had the picture. We'd show you guys. But if I find it on Twitter, I'll repost it later on tonight so you guys can see it. It was pretty funny. But
and Gronk is a big dude still. I mean, he's still, even after not, he's still very fit.
Well, Gronk is huge. He's standing next to him. I mean, you'd have to be like, a regular sized dude. Even a regular sized dude would look like a midget compared to, Gronk, So it's one of those things where, he's not going to look small, but I mean, he doesn't really look like an NFL tight end is really the point I was trying to make, because he doesn't. But anyways, to get on to, there's another point that I wanted to get on about these interviews that CHGO is doing. Here's that picture. Aldo found it. This is awesome. So here's Brock Bowers. He kind of looks like Joe Montana in the face a little bit. He's like balding, he's got the short shorts. It's pretty funny. Like, I don't know what's up with those shoes. Oh man, it's funny. He looks like, he looks like he could be my age or older, dude. It's kind of funny, but
it's like an 80s basketball.
This guy is one of the most dynamic prospects in the draft, according to most experts, guys. He could go in the top 10. So we'll see what happens. But I mean, me personally, this is, again, I don't want to get too far into this, guys, but this is just a little fear I have. And again, this is like saying you have a fear of like Ohio State quarterbacks, or you don't like taking a certain guy from a certain school or a certain position from a certain school because of their history. But like, I always get scared of tight ends that go early in the draft. They scare the shit out of me because, I mean, how many of them really pan out, guys? The one that just went recently, Kyle Pitts, has basically done nothing. And they're hoping to get something out of him in these next couple of years. So, I mean, and it's not because he's not a great player. He's okay. He's pretty good. I mean, at least he's shown he can be good. But they haven't had a good offense out there either. So, but he also has been underwhelming as a player for a top 10 pick. So, that again, it kind of scares me going with tight ends early. But where I was going before, guys, I wanted to talk about one of these other interviews because this has kind of made the rounds in the last few days. CHGO talked with Jackson Smith and Jigba and Chris Olave down at the Super Bowl at Radio Row. And it was interesting because both those players, not both players, but Jackson Smith and Jigba played for Shane Waldron in Seattle last year. Both these guys have played with Justin Fields at Ohio State. So naturally they wanted to ask about their thoughts on Shane Waldron. Jackson Smith and Jigba's thoughts on Shane Waldron coming to Chicago. And I'm not sure if we have the clip here or not, but basically what happened was Adam Hogue asked his thoughts on Waldron, and there was like a silence. And he didn't really say anything at first. And then he kind of made a joke. Are we live right now? Jackson Smith and Jigba did. They weren't at the time. So he basically went on to say, he's a great guy. He's going to love Justin and things of that nature. But it was like really super awkward that he didn't like come out and say, yeah, he's a good coach or anything like that. He kind of like wasn't real sure about it, and
I have interpreted it a little differently than that. Personally. I think I interpreted it differently than they did.
Well, I was going to say, here's my thoughts on this whole thing. Now, I want to get your thoughts too, Tim, but my thoughts on this are this. So let's say let's say Jackson Smith and Jigba is not the biggest fan of Shane Waldron. Well, let's think about why that might be. So JSN is the number 3 receiver with the Seahawks. Let's not forget that, guys. He's the number 3 receiver behind DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. And I think sometimes people forget just how good Tyler Lockett is. I mean, this dude is a very, very good football player. And he does nothing but soak up targets every year. I think he gets 1,000 yards like almost every single year. It's crazy. I don't know if he did this year or not, but he probably bordered it. So my point is the guy is like productive year after year after year. He's a very good player. So being behind those guys is no diss. But the fact of the matter is he's the number 3 receiver in that offense. And they ran a lot of 2 tight end sets in Seattle, which if that's the case and you're running, 12 personnel, you're not going to have 3 receivers on the field. Okay. You're going to have the extra tight end and you're going to get rid of one of those receivers. So that's number 1. Number 2, this is what I understand about it. For a rookie receiver to not be this is assuming he's not the biggest fan of Shane Waldron, which I could be wrong, but based on what we saw in that video, there's a good chance he's not the biggest fan of his. For a rookie receiver to walk into the league and have 60-plus catches and 600-plus yards and 4 touchdowns is pretty damn good, okay? And if you don't like your offensive coordinator putting up those kind of numbers as a rookie behind 2 really good receivers in your offense and your team is running a lot of 12 personnel, that just kind of sounds like you're a little whiny to me. But that's just my opinion. Go ahead, Tim, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, before I mention my comments, Aldo actually has the video of this. So let's go ahead and play Jackson Smith and Jigba's response to Adam Hogue's question.
Bears fans are super interested about the offensive coordinator coming in, Shane Waldron. What can you tell them about who they just hired to try to get this offense where it needs to go?
This is live?
Yeah, we're not live. We're not live.
I'm playing. Good luck to y'all. I mean, he's a great person, great offensive coordinator. I was very lucky to have him my first year. Learned a lot from him. I think him and Justin will mesh well, and adding more guys around him, I think it would be great. So we'll see.
Do you have any advice that you give to Justin in that situation, considering that the coach that's coming in?
Oh yeah, I mean he's gonna love Justin. So really, just Justin, be yourself and go make plays for real. That's it.
Fair enough.
So before you say anything, Tim, go ahead. I was going to say, before you say anything, that was kind of what I was trying to make a point of, guys. He didn't have any conviction in it, is my point. And he just kind of said things at the end there to kind of, I think, save his ass, I guess, in a way, kind of like, yeah, I learned a lot from him. He's a great guy, because he didn't know what else to say in the moment. And again, it's like we were kind of talking about before. Initial reactions mean something to me, guys. So when somebody doesn't right away, when he's doing this, that kind of tells me I'm not a real big fan of this guy, and I don't know how to say it to you guys on the air. Okay, so to me, I don't think he realized. He said it was a joke, that "Are we live?" thing, but in any case, it's like he must not have really known what to say, in my opinion, and I don't really know if he's the biggest fan of Waldron. But again, I just think it's kind of whiny, because the guy had 60-plus catches and 600-plus yards as a rookie receiver, number 3 receiver, okay, mind you, in a really good offense. So that, whatever. So you can say whatever you want about that. And Cliff says he was underused, and maybe he was a little bit. But again, when you're running a lot of 2 tight end sets, it's kind of hard to get your number 3 receiver in there. But go ahead, Tim. I didn't mean to cut you off beforehand.
Well, I'm kind of in the. A lot of people thought he should have been a first-round pick. And remember how people were like clamoring for the Bears to take him at number 9 overall last year?
I was not one of those people at all.
Yeah, and anybody that like understood knew that that was like ridiculous because he wasn't that great of a receiver coming into the draft that you take with a spot that high. So I think he had a lot of really high expectations because of his freshman season at Ohio State. And outside of that year, he really never did all that well. And so I think everybody's just thinking about it that way. I think it hyped him up to a point. But to be honest, in my assessment of that video, when I was like, first of all, that was like the first question they were asked. That was the first actual question that they were asked as far as responding to a football question. Everything else was just like, hey, how are you? Like, blah, 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 blah. What's going on? Like, what are you doing here right now? Like, what kind of things are you up to? Yada, yada. That was the first actual question that was asked that they were looking for a response for. And I think it kind of just caught him off guard because the way the question, but the first set of questions was asked like, hey, we're here to just like very informal. And then it was more of a formal question from Carmen. And I think that kind of threw him off a little bit. And that, I think maybe that's where the are we live question came from. I don't necessarily think it had anything to do with his relationship with Waldron. And yeah, like you said, initial reaction does mean something, but I kind of think he was joking to a point. I really do. And he said he wasn't. It did kind of seem though. I think it was just a bad attempt at joking humor. But he did say that he loves him and that he's going to do a great job with Justin and that offense is going to hum better than it has. I don't think that I think maybe it's more of a, if he does feel a certain type of way, it's probably because, he didn't feel like he was utilized that much, but really he was. Like, if you think about it, 60 catches is a lot for a rookie and there's a lot of targets there. So, I don't know what there would be to not like about Waldron, or maybe he's just had a bad experience his first year in Seattle with all the other weapons around. And, now that Pete Carroll's gone, the whole thing is kind of shifting and everybody's leaving. But me personally, I don't think it really means anything. I think it was so overblown and that video went viral. And so everybody made this massive, huge deal out of something that I really didn't think was much of anything, in my opinion.
Sorry, guys, I was muted. Sorry about that. But I mean, I don't necessarily disagree with you. Maybe it was blown a little out of proportion because, it doesn't really mean anything in the long run, in my opinion. He's still, at the end of the day, he's pretty widely liked by just about everyone who talks about him. This was like the first, Adam Hogue was saying on CHGO, this is the first negative thing that they've heard about him. And I wouldn't even say it was negative. It was just a sense of unknown, in essence, really. We don't really know what his thoughts are. So I wouldn't call it negative. It was surprising because there wasn't conviction in the guy. It was what it was, more or less. It wasn't really negativity, I would say. But, in any case, he's the guy, at this point, we're going to have to see what happens here. But a lot of rave reviews from people around the league, nationally, and even, there's been some people with the Seahawks that weren't huge fans of his, but that's with their media anyways. And that's, you could, obviously that's going to be the case everywhere you go. We talked about this before on the show. Anywhere you go in any city with any team, they're going to have, issues with their coordinators. That's just how it is. There's almost never a perfect world. There's about 5 coordinators in the entire league on both sides of the ball where, every fan base is like, I love my guy. Steve Spagnuolo with the Chiefs is probably one of those. I doubt there's very many fans that don't like Spags. Okay. So my point is there's just not a ton of those kind of guys. There's going to be gripes with just about every coordinator and every coach with every team. So, I like Waldron personally. I think he's going to be fine. I think that's another thing I wanted to bring up about with CHGO. This is why I keep saying CHGO, guys. They've had some really good stuff this last week. Today they had Khalil Herbert on with blanking on his name. I'm sorry, TJ Edwards. And Herbert was talking about how he hasn't really talked much with Waldron yet, but he knows they're going to run the ball is one thing he said. So that kind of says something to me for a player to come out and say, I know we're going to run the ball. They've said something to him about that. Like they must have told him, hey, this is something we're going to do. We like to run it. We're going to run it.
The running backs coach who came with Waldron. So
true.
I'm sure there's a conversation there.
And they ran the ball pretty well in Seattle too, guys. Let's not forget that, especially not this past year, but 2 years ago with their rookie Kenneth Walker when he first came in. They ran the ball really well with him. So, let's not forget that, they ran the ball in Seattle too, and I'm sure they're going to do it here. But my point was that, that's kind of something that I'm looking forward to, is knowing that we are going to have more of a balanced offense, I hope, because we do know he likes to throw it too. But I don't expect to see, the screen game going crazy like we did with Getsy. Which I don't want to get into a point with this either, guys. But by the way, if you haven't seen, Luke Getsy got hired by the Las Vegas Raiders to be their offensive coordinator. And basically, the one big point that that the head coach Antonio Pierce with the Raiders made was that when the Bears played them last year and Tyson Bagent started, and I believe Foreman started that game because Herbert was hurt, we kicked the shit out of them the whole game. And he basically said that they whooped our ass is what he said in the quote. And, basically he wanted to get the guy in the building because of it. Now, most of us who've been paying attention to the situation believe and realize that it's most likely he was not their first option. They wanted Cliff Kingsbury, number one. So he was the guy they wanted. And he ended up having a quote unquote contractual issue. At least that's what was reported on. In my opinion, he wanted to go to Washington for whatever reason. Maybe they're going to try to make a play for Caleb Williams. We'll see. It depends on what the Bears want to do because they hold all the cards here. So that's the main key. But I keep kind of jumping around here in different tangents. But what I was trying to make a point of here is that, the Waldron thing, guys, I wouldn't take what one player on the number 3 receiver, mind you, rookie receiver who had 60+ catches and is, for whatever reason, possibly unhappy with his role. I wouldn't take what he said with too much, with a grain of salt, I guess is what I would take it with, is what I should say. Go ahead, Tim.
Well, now you sound like George McCaskey talking about Owen Fruits, but I don't, like I said, I don't really think much into it, and I don't take anything from that. Everything else has been glowing reviews. And how much are we really taking? How much of this are we actually taking from a rookie wide receiver who literally played with him for 1 year? And Aldo made some good points on here too about how, he had DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, and he was injured during training camp with a wrist injury. So yeah, those things all catch up. And I actually want to point out another comment on here after talking about Getsy for a second, because Cliff pointed out, trade with Vegas, get a number 1 pick again next year. And I would say that, for one, that's unrealistic as it is. But number 2, I don't think they're going to be the worst in the NFL, because I think those guys really want to play for Antonio Pierce, which is why he was retained as the head coach. It's not often that you see guys that take an interim role and then actually get to keep the job. Look at how well Rich Bisaccia did a few years ago for them, and they still walked away from him. So I think it's important that he has retained that position, because the players clearly did want to play for him, and they definitely played harder for him than they had at that point. So yeah, I really like it. So
just real quick here, Tim, real quick, I want to make a point about this, because I asked Aldo to put this graphic on the screen just to kind of give you guys an idea. And I know I'm kind of like beating a dead horse a little bit with this, but here's the target distribution last year for the top 3 receivers in Seattle. Okay. There was 122 for Lockett, which led the way, 119 for DK, which was second. Okay. And obviously those guys are going to get the most. 93 for Jackson Smith and Jigba. He was not far behind that. For him to be complaining and for whatever reason to have an issue, it's either because of something that we can't possibly know about, some issue he has with him as a person, or some kind of gripe he has with their connection or whatever, because I can't see how he could be that upset with his production or not, or his usage or whatever, because the guy produced and he had targets. So I don't know, guys. In my opinion, it's something. If he truly is unhappy or not a big fan of Waldron's, it's something we couldn't possibly know why. I think you're lagging, Tim.
I think you were lagging too. You were frozen on my screen. It's probably me. You guys don't know this, but there's an internet outage in my area of town, so I'm actually using a satellite internet at my in-laws' house, so I may be lagging a little bit. So
did you have like some kind of outage with your dryer or something to get too hot because your shirt looks like it shrunk 2 sizes too small for you?
Yeah, I'm surprised you actually wore a hat today because everybody was tired of you like blinding them from the
well, I had no choice.
Head,
I need a haircut desperately, so I had to put it on. But anyways,
yeah, you mean the literally one haircut
in the middle? Yeah, it pretty much is one, but it grows out here and I end up looking like some kind of mad professor or something. I can't be doing that to our viewers.
That's called a natural mullet, and I'm about to grow on it.
Just natural mullet. I would not be proud of rocking anything like that, buddy. But you do you, pal.
I would.
That's fine. So there's a couple of things I want to. There's one thing I want to mention to you guys real quick before we get into the questions that we have. I'm sure you guys have some questions. There's a couple in the queue. Go ahead and throw the rest of the questions you guys have at us real quick. We have a few more minutes here. But while you guys are coming up with your questions, I kind of wanted to mention something because I know you guys are somewhat familiar with the fact that Tim and I are big rock fans, big fans of music, especially guitars and drums and, bass players and stuff like that. So I just kind of wanted to mention something to you guys that I was interested in and see what you guys kind of feel about it. I was thinking, because I was listening to Pink Floyd last night. I just thought, I'm going to wear my Pink Floyd shirt tomorrow because I was listening to David Gilmour play. The guy is just such a phenomenal guitar player for those who aren't familiar. And those who are familiar, how good David Gilmour is and how awesome Pink Floyd is. But, in my opinion, Comfortably Numb is the greatest guitar solo of all time. And if it's not, it's damn near close. You literally can feel your soul moving in this song, dude. If you smoke a good joint or something, dude, you sit back and listen to Comfortably Numb, you'd be feeling that for a minute, dude. Just going into a different world, I'm telling you. So I don't know if you guys are into that kind of thing or not, but I'm in California, so I get down every once in a while. But so like I said, I was listening to that last night. And I really enjoyed it, and I just kind of wanted to mention that to you guys. I wanted to give you guys my list of my favorite. I don't know if it's my favorite, but what I believe are my top 5 favorite guitar players of all time. And admittedly, this list is probably a little biased, but I kind of wanted to know what you guys think about this. So in my opinion, number 1, and this is hands down. Nobody, I don't want to say nobody compares, but nobody else is number 1. Nobody, you can't even say that they're in this. I guess he isn't comparable, I guess is the word I'm looking for. So whatever. It's Hendrix. Okay. Hendrix is the greatest guitar player of all time. And there's so many reasons behind that I believe that. This guy, you watch this guy play live, he was playing stuff with his teeth that most guitar players couldn't play with their hands. It was freaking insane. Okay. Just listening to some of the stuff the dude wrote and played, it was unreal. And many other guitarists would say Hendrix is the greatest. And many other people would agree with me that Hendrix is the greatest. So that's number 1 to me. And if you don't think that, please go listen to some of his live stuff, especially like Machine Gun and watch some of his live performances if you can, because they're amazing. So Hendrix is number 1. Number 2, in my opinion, is Jimmy Page from Led Zeppelin. And everybody's familiar with Jimmy Page. Okay. This guy, I don't even have to speak any words on this part. Okay. The guy has so many great pieces that he wrote. He helped write most of the lyrics with Robert Plant. And they've just got so many hits and so many great guitar parts. He's just an unbelievable guitar player. So everybody knows about Jimmy Page and how awesome he is, but he's number 2 on my list. Number 3 on my list, personally, is Eddie Van Halen. Eddie Van Halen, and my argument behind him is just that he constructed his own guitars to make his own sound, and he could play anything he wanted to. The guy was just unbelievable. I can't remember who it was, but I saw a report or an article one time where someone said he had the fastest right hand in the business, which you could make that argument. It's pretty crazy. the guy, Eruption is just an unbelievably talented solo. I mean, if you guys have never heard that, it was the intro to You Really Got Me. So he really, I mean, he, in my opinion, is number 3 on the list because of his sheer ability and his creativity and the fact he made his own sound, his own guitars and all that. Number 4, we just talked about in David Gilmour. And it's not so much about how good he is, but it's just like the way he composed his guitar parts. Okay. Just unreal stuff, guys. I love the way they sounded, especially in like Comfortably Numb and some of his other solos. Like Young Lust is another one of my personal favorites. I don't know if you guys know that. Yes. Very funky sound. Great, great solo in that. It's really, really cool if you guys have never heard that. Also from The Wall. Time, phenomenal guitar solo in Time. It just, that one will really take you away. That's from Dark Side of the Moon. If you haven't heard it, go check it out. And then finally, number 5 on my list, personally, and a lot of people would agree he's got to be top 5, is, gosh, I'm drawing a blank on his last name now, Keith Richards. Keith Richards from Rolling Stones. The guy has, I mean, he was just, obviously he's a great guitar player, but I mean, look at all the riffs and great guitar parts he wrote for the Stones. I mean, they have so many hits. It's crazy. I mean, they're great, great, great sounds. I mean, just stuff you jive to. I mean, so many sounds that everybody knows from over the years. They're you can make an argument they're the greatest band of all time. In my opinion, they're certainly top 5. So, you know, that's just my top 5 guitarists. I don't know how into all that stuff you guys are, but I figured a lot of our audience is into rock and roll like me and Tim are. So I figured I'd give you guys my top 5 list. And a lot of people would say, well, how can you not have Clapton in there? How can you not have so-and-so in there? Chances are, if you've got a guy that you feel like is in your top 5, I've probably thought about it, and he's probably somewhere in like my top 10 list. Clapton is definitely up there, guys. Clapton is shit. So believe me, if you've got a guitarist that you guys love, feel free to like talk about him or ask us a question about him sometime because we're definitely into it. Drummers, same thing. I'll give you guys a list of my top 5 drummers sometime, and probably even bass players if you'd be interested in that. So if this is something you guys like, please let us know, and you know, either on Twitter or in our comments. Aldo makes a comment. Tim's gonna love that because Tim loves Prince. So, it's his favorite. Aldo says Prince is good. Don't get me wrong. Prince is the shit too, guys. Prince is damn good.
Just stop talking. Stop talking. But Prince is the greatest guitar player of all time. He is. And I'm thank you, Aldo, for mentioning it. I've been waiting to cut Jeff off. I was gonna let him finish what he was saying, but nobody could do it like Prince. The guy could play his own lead, his own rhythm, his own solos, his own bass parts at the same time on the same guitar, wrote all of his own
Billy
music.
Gibbons was doing that shit too. Billy Gibbons was doing lead and rhythm parts too.
I'm not finished. If you want to know how good of a guitarist Prince was and maybe agree with me that he is the greatest of all time, go on YouTube and watch a cover of While My Guitar Gently Weeps. It's got
That's
Prince,
pretty sweet.
It's got Steve Winwood. It's got
Jeff Lynne. It was a tribute to
his
George
son,
Harrison when he died.
Jeff Lynne. Yes. George and Tom Petty. Go watch it. Prince is unbelievable in his solo in that song. Unbelievable. Go watch it. You'll know exactly what I'm talking. And just the swagger and the smooth, just unbelievable. You know, my top 5 is clearly different from Jeff's, but a lot of people don't. I don't like that. Most people don't realize how
we don't have
great
time
of
for
a
your
guitar
top
player
5.
that Prince was. Shut up. I'm just throwing it out there that he one of the greatest there was. So I want to actually point this question out. One question we got earlier from Cliff. He was asking if we thought the Bears should look at potentially signing Matt Araiza, who is known as the punt god. He was the kicker from, correct me if I'm wrong, San Diego State, correct?
I believe so, yeah.
I think San Diego State. He was actually drafted in, I believe, the 5th round by Buffalo last year. And then there was allegations of rape that came his way right immediately following the draft. And they actually ended up cutting him. But since then, he's recently been cleared of all of the charges. He was not involved at all. I believe he was at a location at the same time, but not. I'm not sure what it was, but he was cleared of all charges. He wasn't involved at all. But I like Trenton Gill, and I thought he did really good as a rookie, and he kind of fell off a little bit this year. But it would depend on money. Like if he's not going to take a lot of money, then yeah, I would 100% sign this guy. But here's the thing: a lot of people don't think about punting is not all about distance; it's about ball placement as well. So that is important. You know, it doesn't matter if you can kick the ball 85 yards if you can't punt and pin when you need to at the 1 yard line. Or if you're punting from inside the 50 and your team just needs you to pin it, which happens with the Bears a lot. They just need a guy to pin. That is more important in those situations. So I wouldn't be against it, but you've got him on he's on a rookie deal. Trenton Gill is, and I feel like he's been solid. So it's not a necessary signing for me, but I wouldn't be against it.
Well, we got to get going pretty quick. So I'll just give you my quick response to that. I know they still like Trent Gill, number one. Number two, I would just say there's a reason the guy is still unsigned. I don't know what it is. So that would be my point in that. And it's Poles has said this is a young and impressionable team. I doubt they want to bring someone in who has question marks, regardless of whether they're fair or not to the kid. There's still question marks. So I don't know if you want to bring him into their situation knowing that because they still like the guy they have. So that's my opinion on that. So there's a couple other questions. The first one I want to get to here was where did it go? It was about trading down. I can't find it now. There we go. Viso Joe wants to know if the Bears take a quarterback at number 1, do you think Poles will most likely trade down with number 9? And I would say yes, Joe. If they take a quarterback at number 1, I do think they trade down at 9 because they're number 1 going to be trying to pick up a second-round pick that they don't have right now. You could argue that if they take a quarterback, maybe they get one with the Fields trade, and that's possible. But I still think they'd be trying to trade down at 9 to get themselves some insurance, if not an extra first-round pick next year. So I think that's what they would be doing in that scenario. In my opinion, I think it's possible they could move down from both 1 and 9. If they decide they want to stick with the quarterback that they have, I think they could move down from 1 and 9. So, you know, if that was the case, you're talking about picking up some serious capital, and that would be really cool. So, I mean, maybe, but yeah, I could see it. Yeah, I think if they do take a quarterback at 1, I do think they move down from 9. Viso Joe, I do think that will be the case. And I think I did quarterback or question in here.
Yeah, there's another question. I'll just say that yes, if they take a quarterback at 1, which I have my opinions on that, but if they do, I think it's 100% that they're trading down at 9 and collecting another second-round pick. But there was a question on here about in the song "Beat It," the guitarist wearing a top hat. Now the guy that wears a top hat is Slash, but the guy that plays the lead guitar part in "Beat It" is actually Eddie Van Halen.
Eddie Van Halen, yeah, Eddie Van Halen plays that part, and it's awesome. If you, I mean, anybody who's a fan of that song, you heard Eddie Van Halen's work, man. That shit's awesome. So yeah, I like that you guys are talking about this in here. It's cool. But yeah, Slash is awesome too, you guys. He's Guns N' Roses though. Slash was the guitar player for Guns N' Roses. So November Rain, great guitar solo, and he's got a lot of other really good guitar parts too. So Slash was also
is one of the most Sweet Child
damn awesome.
Mine's riff is one of the most popular riffs in all of music. Yeah, and here's my promise. I don't know if we'll do it next week, but I promise to give my top 5 list guitarists. And for those of you guys that don't know, I'm actually a drummer. So I will give you my top 5 list of drummers. And I'm sorry, but you will never, ever argue with me about the greatest drummer of all time. But that will be in a future episode.
No one's going to argue with either of us about that because I'm on board with you on that one. And we'll get into that another day. But I'm also a little bit of a drummer myself. I have a kit in my garage that I play every once in a while, but I'm not very good. So, but in any case, yeah, that's something we can get into if you guys are into that kind of thing. I think it was fun talking about guitars today. So, if there is a comment here from Joe about Eddie Jackson's tweet. Seems like he's gone. Best of wishes to him. And what he said is new beginnings. So it's a little cryptic. It doesn't exactly say anything, but usually we can kind of put 2 and 2 together when something like that happens, especially with his cap situation right now. I think it's pretty much, it's pretty much saying I'm gone. At least I would say. I mean, it seems that way. Here's my thing though. Like if they decide they want to keep him around because he is kind of like the captain of the secondary. And there is a significant difference in the way his teammates play and the way the defense plays when he's on the field or not. He might not have the most individual production, but when he's in, the defense plays pretty well with him there. So you can make the argument that he is worth keeping around, but the problem is he's so expensive. So if he is in fact gone, it's because of that. It's because it's too expensive. But I could see a world where they either cut him or they asked him to stick around on a reduced salary, which if he says no to that, they are just going to cut him. But maybe he tests out free agency and finds that nobody's going to be willing to give him any money. Nobody wants to pay him anything because he hasn't produced that much. He's got some injury history. He's old or older now. So maybe nobody's really going to want to give him anything. So maybe the Bears say, okay, well, we went through the draft. We didn't really find a safety early on like we wanted to. We didn't get another one in free agency that was going to shore up the back end, that we expected to. Just kind of got some smaller pieces. So here's 1 year for however much would you take it kind of thing. Maybe they bring him back on a 1 year deal, kind of thing until they can solidify the position more in the future, because I don't think they're going to take a safety early. I think they would take one later just because they have so many other needs and it's harder to find those positions of importance later on in the draft that you need. Like you're not going to find an edge rusher late in the draft. You're not going to find a big time receiver late in the draft. Okay. Maybe the second round, people can argue that point, but you're not going to find especially, big time positions that you have important needs at like I said, edge rusher. You're not going to find that late in the draft. So in my opinion, and Aldo makes a point here, the Bears probably told his agent that they want to redo his contract. And if they did, he's probably like, well, if he's saying new beginnings, that's probably his way of saying F you. I'm not doing that. So like I said, maybe it comes down to later on, he can't work something out with another team and he ends up coming back anyways on a small 1 year deal or something because the Bears didn't get their long-term piece with safety figured out. So maybe we'll see, guys. It all depends.
Well, they're not going to. I highly doubt that they would be willing to pay him what he's got coming his way because it's a big hit on the cap. But at the same time, Matt Eberflus clearly loves Eddie Jackson. Like he specifically mentions Eddie Jackson constantly, and that's a very telling. I think that he's actually one of Eberflus's favorite players on that defense. I really think he really likes Eddie Jackson. And let's face reality, the entire secondary plays way better when Eddie Jackson is on the field. And as far as contract things go, if he does go test the open market, if that is in fact what happens, he's not going to get a good contract. It's just not going to happen, especially not for a safety that late. I just don't see it happening. But, I personally really like Eddie Jackson, and I really do hope that they do find a way to keep him around. I don't think he's the future by any means, but it gives you the opportunity to now draft a guy that you can actually develop in the later rounds and not have to throw him in the starting role. And Eddie Jackson is a really good guy to help groom this guy up and help coach him through situations and maybe find ways to get them both on the field at the same time. It's really difficult to do that because you want to have a safety that can come up in the box like Jaquan Brisker and also have that guy who's ball hawking. It makes it tough when you got two guys that are very similar styles, kind of like Tayshaun Gibson was a lot like Eddie Jackson, and it wasn't a real great pairing. Although Tayshaun Gibson was a good player, it just wasn't a good pairing. So we'll see, but I personally would like to see that. There's a question here from McFack. Let's answer this question. It'll probably be our last one. What do you guys think of the disgusting, cheesy, created, get rid of Fields media drama? I'll just say this: anything that is pushed to get rid of Fields in a negative manner, I have nothing to do with. I don't even pay it any attention. I don't give it any merit because I don't care. I know where I stand on it. And I know that Ryan Poles is going to do his due diligence. And yes, I want to see them find a way to keep Fields here and build around him. But if in fact Ryan Poles chooses that the best scenario would be to move on, and who knows, maybe he drafts Drake May. We don't know. If you ask Nate Tice, he is all on the Drake May train. And I personally like Drake May as well. But as far as he goes, or as far as Ryan Poles goes, I trust Ryan Poles to make the best decision, and I don't care what the media says or what everybody thinks.
Well, you guys know how I feel. We've talked about this in the past, what my preferences are. I personally like Fields. I would probably move down and stick with him and give him a shot. And it's nothing against the quarterbacks that are in the draft. That being said, I agree with Tim. I don't like the negativity thing. You know, I understand why people would want Caleb. I understand why people would want to move on and take a different quarterback. I get it. I understand the sentiment behind that. You know, they want more growth from the guy that they have under center right now. I get it. But I personally think that there's more there, that they could still unlock it, and they just need more time with him because he showed a lot of growth at the end of the season last year. That's just my personal opinion. You guys know that if you've been watching the show. So I don't know. I just don't like the negativity either, guys. But I understand both sides of the scenario. And again, like we've said before, I trust whatever they do, and I'm a Bears fan, so I'm going to support whoever the quarterback is. But with that being said, guys, we're out of time. We got to go. So I appreciate you guys. We got to get this thing out of here. So give us a like and a follow. Love you guys. Meet us next week again, same time Friday. Peace out.
See you guys later.